Good morning, everybody. It's Advent of Code Day 2. I'm going to try to whiz through this video and try and get a solution really quickly, but I'm going to do this blind. So unfortunately, at the very start of it, you're going to have to see me look at the text and read through it, but I will very quickly skip through to the important parts of the detail. Remember, as I said, the text is quite large normally, and you need to use your powers of abstraction. Also, I apologise in advance if there is any noise in the background. There is some building work going on next door, and hopefully they're not going to start drilling anytime soon. So I've not looked at this yet, so I'm going to click on to day 2 of Advent of Code. Cube Conundrum. So you are launched high into the atmosphere, and the apex of your trajectory barely reaches the surface of a large island floating in the sky. Land in the leaves. It's cold. Elf explains I've arrived at Snow Island. I was launched by my trebuchet from yesterday, presumably. As you walk, the elf shows you a small bag with some cubes, which are going to be red, green or blue. Each time you play this game, there will be a secret number of cubes of each colour in the bag. Your goal is to figure out the information about the number of cubes. Brilliant. Get this information. Once the bag has been loaded with cubes, the elf will reach into the bag, grab a handful of random cubes, show them to you, and then put them back in the bag, and he'll do it a few times per game. So I can play several games and record the information from each game, which is my input. Each game is listed with its ID number. So game 11 is game 11, followed by a semicolon separated by a list of subsets of cubes. So I'm assuming they're going to give me a large amount of data in a second. What have we got? So say three. So for example, game 1 has got 3 blue, 4 red, 1 red, 2 green, 6 blue, 2 green. I need to reread that because it looks like it's not just a list of things, there's a set of semicolons. So you play several games, record the information from each game. So each game is listed with its ID number, followed by a semicolon separated by subsets of cubes revealed in the bag. So the first revelation is 3 blue and 4 red. Then the second one is 1 red, 2 green, and the next one's 6 blue, 2 green. In game 1, 3 sets of cubes are revealed from the bag and then put back in again. The first set is 3 and 4, as we said. Then the second set is 1. Okay, so that's easy to understand. Elf would like to know which games would have been possible if the bag contained only 12 red cubes, 13 green cubes, and 14 blue cubes. So in the example, games 1, 2 and 5 would have been possible if the bag had been loaded with that configuration. However, game 3 would have been impossible because at one point the elf showed you 20 red cubes at once. Similarly, game 4 would have also been impossible because the elf showed you 15 blue cubes at once. So if you add up the IDs of the games, that would have been possible. You get 8. So determine which games would have been possible if the bag had been loaded with 12 red cubes, 13 green cubes, and 14 blue cubes. So this is once again going to be a string processing problem. I'm going to have to do a bit of string manipulation. It looks like what I'm going to have to do is start splitting the string up. So I'm going to get the information. I'll first of all split them so I can see each one. I'll look at each line one by one. I'll get the ID of the game. Maybe what I'll do is I'll store that in some sort of structure. Hopefully you can't hear people banging next door. I've got a nasty feeling they're going to start drilling soon. 1 blue, 2 green, 3 green. So let's look at the one that said it was impossible. So it looks like the balls don't go back, or the cubes don't go back into the bag. So in game 1, which was the game which was impossible? Game 3 was impossible because the elf showed me 20 red. Oh, okay, so I'm only looking for an instance where there are too many cubes. Game 4 is impossible because the elf showed me 15 blue cubes in one go. Oh, so the cubes do go back into the bag. So actually, most of the information about playing the game is irrelevant. All I'm doing then is I'm looking for an amount of cubes which is greater than 12, or greater than 13 or greater than 14 to make it an impossible game. So if I flip that logic around, the games are possible if all of the values where I've got a red cube that come out are less than 12, or the green is less than 13, and the blue is less than 14. So let's get my puzzle input. Oh my words, 100 games. And what do I need to do to get the final solution? I need to add up the IDs of the games to make them possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that input there. So save link as, and I'll save that into, I've got a bit of a messy desktop, you might have noticed. I always say I'm going to tidy it up, and I don't always do. I'm going to save it as input.txt, and we can get going. So I've already set my code up. Now remember, what we're going to do is we're going to load in the file, so it's going to be the same as yesterday. File, open, and I called it input.txt, didn't I? And I like to just test things straight away by printing file.read, just to make sure everything's worked. And I've got an error because I've forgotten to put a set of speech marks there. And I've got a second error because there's no such file or directory. Did I not save it in their input? I didn't put a file extension on the end of it, so I'll just stick that on the end there. It is a text file after all. And run it. There we go. So I am going to loop through each line one by one. And what I'm going to do is there's lots of ways I can do it. For example, I can just remove the word game and a space, and then I could assume that the first digit, if the first digit is not a colon, if the first digit, once I've removed this, is a single number, then that is the ID of the game. And if there's a number followed by a second number, the actual easiest way that I can see straight away to do it, and if you're in a tight spot in a programming problem, you've got to solve something quickly, I just go with the first solution that I can come up with, and as soon as I hit a dead end, what I try and do is I then try and look at a different line of inquiry for it. So I can see that if I split this string on the colon, so I'll split it, so I'll have two separate strings. I'll have the one that's to the right of it, and then the one that's to the left of it. The one that's to the left of it, if I then remove game and space, that'll leave me with the ID. Then all I need to do is process the other side of the string, and if I split them up on the semicolons, that'll give me the individual revelations of what's in the bag, and then I can just start counting them up, and I can see which ones are possible and which ones are impossible. I'll probably do it another way. I could probably write some sort of interesting statement to look at whether or not a certain string pattern emerges in the string itself. So, for example, if I see a number followed by the word red, and then I can check if the number is greater than a value. However, that's going to be quite complicated to do. I'm just going to go with a solution that I think of straight away. So let's loop through the file. So we'll say for line in file, which is what we did yesterday as well, and I've got a feeling we're going to do that pretty much every day too. For line in file, I am going to split into two separate strings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an empty list, and I'm going to say, I'm going to put line split, I'm going to make it into an empty list, an empty array. Remember, Python doesn't have arrays per se, so I can make an empty list and then I can just split the line into it. So if I go line split equals line dot split. Now split takes a value. Does this work how I expect it to work? Split takes a value where I can put a colon there, and I'm certain what I can then do is I can do something like print line split part 0, and I can then do print line split part 1. So I'm going to split the line up into two, and I've got some weird indentation problem going on there, so that's going to obviously cause me a problem later down the line. That looks a bit better. So if I stop there and run that, there we go. So you can see that I've got game 1, because that's what I extracted from the line. So if I actually print the line as well, we can investigate and see what's going on here. understand that people watching videos, some of you may know exactly what's going on. Just jump ahead, people that have never seen any sort of string manipulation like this before. What's happening is I'm taking the line and I'm splitting it where I find a colon, and I'm going to assign that to my empty list or my empty array. So I will end up with 2 parts, because there's always going to be 2 parts to each line. There's a side where it's got the game and the number of the game, which I'm interested in, and then the second half of it, the right side of the colon, is going to have my details. So what I'm then going to do is I'm going to take line split 0 and I'm going to remove the word game. So I'm going to make a value which will be called ID. So ID is going to be equal to line split part 0 dot replace. So I'm going to replace the value of game with a space at the end of it, and I'm going to replace it with just an empty string. Okay, now if I print ID each time, you'll see that I get just the number that I'm looking for. So I've managed to extract that data from my string. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign that to ID, but I want ID to actually be an integer because I want to add them together. So if I cast it as an integer, I'm going to then have my ID stored as an integer. I'm not going to print it out because it's going to look exactly the same. After I've got that, I can then start worrying about the next few lines. So what I'm going to also do is I'm going to produce, for every line, I'm going to produce a, I'll call it stages maybe. Stages is going to also be a separate list. And what I'm going to then do, is going to look a little bit confusing, is I'm going to say stages is going to be equal to line split dot split. So I'm going to split the second part of my string, and I'm going to split it up by the semicolon. Now, if I were to print stages each time, we'll see that we've now got the game is the only thing that I'm outputting, as well as the line itself. But you can see I've now got an array of just the colours which are there. Now, interestingly, each of the semicolons is followed by a space, so I can just get rid of that space by splitting on the substring of semicolon space. And that should have got rid. It hasn't done it, has it? It's not. Seems to have got. Oh, it's got rid of the first, that one there. Okay, so I need to also split on colon space as well, because the first one, look, so 3 green, 3 blue has a space before my number 3 there. 2 blue, 2 red, 2 green. It looks perfect. I've also got a new line at the end of every line, which was reading. That's not in the original line there, but it appears to have been put into my split value there. So if I, before I split this line here, I'm just going to do line split part 1 dot replace the new line value. I don't think it's really going to, it might not make a difference, but it's just a bit annoying to see it. Didn't replace my new line, did it? Line split 1. Oh yeah, I need to assign that. So line split part 1 is going to be equal to line split part 1 dot replace. Done. So I've managed to clean this up a little bit. And I can see I've got 3 green, 3 blue, 2 red. Now, I need to probably split it again. So for every item, which is going to be inside my list called stages, I'm going to look at the total number of balls which is pulled out. Now, it's different every time. So in the first game, for example, the first showing gives me 2 lots of balls, and then the second showing actually gives me 3 lots of balls. And so on and so on and so on. There's only ever red, blue or green balls, isn't there? So I can also do a total for each of the lines. So I'm just going to set that up while I'm thinking of it. Red equals 0, blue equals 0, and green equals 0, because I don't need to... Oh no, I don't need to count them, do I? I just need to look for when I have a value which is greater than, what was it, 15, 14, and 12 for red. So let's look at stages. Rather than print stages, I'm going to loop through stages. So this is going to be a loop nested inside this second, inside the initial loop, which goes through every line. And I'm going to say 4, I will call it balls in stages. So balls is going to now be each of the individual parts of this larger array. So just to print out, just to show you what's going on, if I do print balls every time, you can see now for every game I'm going to see the showing that goes on there. And what I can do is I can then split balls to find the individual values. So for each, I'll tell you what, I'm going to actually rename that. I'm going to call that for each stage. In stages, I'm going to say balls is equal to an empty string, and then balls is going to then be equal to stage dot split again. And I'm going to split this time on my comma with space after it. And if I print that every time, print balls, I've got syntax error because I haven't closed my brackets. Okay, so I have now got a individual array which shows me that hasn't really done anything, has it? Has that not just done exactly, has that not just laid things out to be exactly the same as what I was looking at before? When I print stages, what did that look like? Stages. So, okay, so I'm splitting that up into its individual parts. 12 red, 12 green, that's fine. And then, hang on. So my first output is my line, which is there. My second output is the individual stages of the game, which is fine. And then my next output should be each stage split apart by semicolon. Let's take this out. So one thing that I do, if I ever get stuck, I start taking things out with comments. Guys, just a quick way of doing things. There's probably better ways you can debug things, but let's have a look and see. I just seem to have just lost myself a little bit here. I've got 1 green, 2 blue, 13 red, 2 blue, 3 green, 4 green, and 14 red. I have split them apart already, so you can see that it's a bit confusing because each line contains a small comma. So for each stage in stages, if I just print stage, that gave me, I'll just get back to where I was. Yeah, that gave me each substring. So surely if I do, oh, okay, I know what I'm doing. Sorry. So I did need to get back to where I was. Let's take this code here. So it's very, I just confused myself a little bit. I probably, as I say, I'm not always going to go for efficiency. I'm just going to go for the first solution that I can find. So I've now got a string, an array of strings which is in here. And what I can do is I can then loop through each set of balls. So for, let's say I've got a, let's say each ball in balls, I'll then print ball, and that should give me what I was expecting. There we go. So I can now see I've got 12 red, 9 green, 12 red, 9 green, 9 red, for 3 green. So what I'm going to do for every set of balls that comes out, I'm going to check to see, first of all, if the string contains the word red. If it contains the word red, then I'll just work out what the value is. So I'm assuming if I split that again, the easy way to do that is split that again on space and then look at the left-hand value, and I will check to see if it is greater than 12. If it is greater than 12, then I won't do anything. If it is less than 12 and green is less than 13 and blue is less than 14. So that's actually a little bit more complicated than it sounds, because I'm going to need to loop through each of these values one by one, and I'm going to need to see if it is possible. So the easiest way for me to do that is to assume for every do I want to do it for every stage, or do I want to do it for every line? I want to do it for every line. What I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that every line is possible. So I'm going to say possible equals true. So I'll start with the assumption that everything's going to be possible, and then if I discover that I've got more than 12 balls that are red, for example, then I will say it's impossible. And then if I've arrived at the end of that loop and I've got possible equals true still, then I can just add this to my running total. So I'm going to make a little total at the top, which is going to be 0, and I will add my value of my ID, which you can remember I've stored in ID already, and hopefully we will get the correct answer from there. So for each ball in balls, I'm going to literally say if ball dot contains the string red, for example. So if it contains the word red, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, first of all, let's just check that works. Print ball. So I should actually just see all of the sets of red ball. String has no attribute called contains. There we go. So what I have got there is the I've just forgotten how to do something in Python. So I think actually I remember how to do it. I think if red in ball. Yeah, that was how you do it. So in most other languages, a string object has a object called has a method called contains, which will let you check whether or not a substring is inside it. But in Python, you do it like this. So if red is in ball, literally, if the string red is inside the string ball, then what I'm going to do is I am going to split that value, and I will see. Actually, all of them, I can split all of them, can't I? In fact, actually, there's an easier way of doing it. So let's say I've got, for each ball, I'm going to say pair is an empty string, and I'll say pair equals ball dot split. There we go. So just seeing a more obvious solution to it. So I don't need to do this checking if the value is red or not, because I need to check every value after all. So if I just split them on the space, I can then just say if the right-hand value is red, then I'll just check whether or not it's less than or greater than the maximum number, which appears to be 12. So just check it. It looks like it should work. It contains only 12 red cubes, 13 green cubes, and 14 blue cubes. So if it is equal to 12, then it should be fine. So I'm only discounting it if the value is greater than 12. So less than or equal to 12 should be fine. So for ball, in balls, pair equals ball dot split. I'm going to say ball. Oh, I'm typing in straight into the interpreter there. So I'm going to say if pair, the right hand side is called pair 1. So if pair right hand side 1 is equal to red, then I will print. I will then basically say if the integer equivalent of pair, because remember it's a string, the integer equivalent of pair 0 is greater than 12, then possible is going to be false. I'm also going to check those values. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to say red, green, and blue. So it's 13 green, 14 blue. So greater than 13, greater than blue is 14. So by the end of that entire loop, before I go and look at the next line, after I'm done with the stages, I'm basically going to say if possible is equal to true. If it's still possible after all that, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say total equals total plus ID, and I think that's the answer. And if I go right back to the end and I complete my loop, I'll just print total. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take out all of the other prints, just to make it appear a little bit easier. I've also just realised that you probably don't need to set up a empty list every time I want to create pair, because I think that will just produce the list and instantiate it for me there. We'll see. If I run that, I've got an invalid syntax error. So my invalid syntax, is that I need double equals because I'm checking for equality. I'm not assigning a value to pair 1. I've got another syntax error, so I do need to actually check that there. Oh no, I don't, because if possible is double equals true. I should have got 2541. So if I go to my answer and I type in 2541, submit, that's the right answer. We are 1 gold star closer. I'm not going to do part 2 because that is a 25-minute video. I did that completely blind. So next time I'm going to read the value before, so you don't have to spend 5 minutes or so watching me try to determine exactly what I need to do. But this is I guess it's a bit of a messy solution. I think I can probably tidy it up by, so for example, if I took that out there, see, it's still going to arrive at the same value. So I can do things like take out these, what are effectively declarations of empty string, of empty lists, and it'll still run and get me the same thing. And actually that condenses it into like slightly fewer lines. As I said, I could have probably used some sort of pattern matching device in order to find whether or not it just had the word red and what number preceded the word red, and I could have probably worked it out a lot quicker than that. There's loads of different things that I probably could have done, but this is the solution that I've come up with. So hopefully, once again, you learned something from it. Please check back for the next video, which is going to be day 3. I'll probably try and do it tomorrow because it's a Sunday, and if I don't get to do it, I'll upload it in the week along with some other videos. So have a good day, and I will see you again soon. Thank you for watching.